Hi, welcome to this webinar about Windows 10 Anniversary Update and the support that Delphi provides to it today. My name is Marco Cantu. I'm one of the product managers for RUT Studio at Embarcadero Technologies, and there you can see my email address and Twitter account in case you want to get in touch with any question or follow-up request. In this webinar, we're going to cover different topics focused on Windows technology, and we are mostly going to focus on VCL, although some of the features also equally apply to FireMonkey. We are trying to understand what's the role of different APIs that the Windows 10 platform provides, how VCL hooks to those APIs, and what is coming along in terms of WINRT and Windows Desktop Bridge support. And finally, I'm going to provide sneak peek, some overview of features that are going to ship with Berlin Update 2, but are not available publicly today. First, let me re-emphasize a key concept, and this is the fact that the VCL, the Visual Component Library that is available in Delphi and C Builder, is by far the best library for Windows desktop development. It's the best component library and object-oriented library with a Windows desktop focus. And not only that, but it fully embraces Windows 10 and the latest features of the Windows platform. The other thing I want to underline is that Windows 10 itself is a very fast-growing version of Windows. It is being adopted widely throughout consumers and enterprises alike. Although when building application for Windows, we always have to keep in mind that at least today, the largest number of users are likely going to be on Windows 7. So having a way to support Windows 10 and Windows 7 at the same time is still a key proposition at this point in time. Of course, things will change in the future. So if Windows 10 is getting fairly popular, it's important to see what is different at the core level compared to Windows 7 or compared to previous versions of Windows. Windows 10 includes 3 core APIs or development approaches. One is the classic Windows API. I mean, kernel, user, GDI, and a bunch of DLL that make up the core of Windows since its foundation and are still the core of the platform today. Then there's the new WinRT API that was introduced in Windows 8 and extended in Windows 10. This is an interesting API. It's loosely COM-based, but it has its own flavor, as we'll see later. And this API is the new foundation Microsoft is touting as the core for universal Windows platform applications. However, applications that target specifically the WinRT API will run only on Windows 10. And there is some Windows 8 compatibility, but clearly there is no Windows 7 compatibility. The other option is to create .NET applications, something we don't support out of the box, and go for a layer that's on top of either the classic Windows API or WinRT, but doesn't really provide a smooth bridge from the old to the newer technology. So if you create using a UI library for .NET framework that's traditional, those same components will not directly map to WinRT components. The last concept that's worth underlying is what's a Windows Universal Platform app? In the concept that most people will associate with it, of course, is universal, meaning it can run on different hardware platforms that support Windows 10, like Windows Phone, like Windows Desktop, like the Xbox. It's also used as a general way to indicate first class or modern or Windows 10 specific Windows applications. In fact, a universal Windows app can technically be desktop only or mobile only. So while this is generally reserved for WinRT apps, as we'll see later, there are bridging technologies that can be used to migrate an existing application to the Universal Windows platform and make it a first-class citizen for the platform. And that's something that's available for your applications built with RunStudio today. So a little bit of a history timeline around the APIs. Originally, since very old days, there was and there still is the Win32 API that has full mapping to the Visual Component Library and the RTL. Microsoft introduced .NET as a separate SaaS system, although it still piggybacks on Win32 for a lot of features. And since Windows 8, we also get the WinRT API. Now, there is a lot of interaction between these different layers. So WinRT does interact with .NET, but the VCL also can interact with both Win32 and WinRT quite freely. There is also some interaction that VCL has with the .NET side. So again, reiterating a concept already mentioned, the VCL is the best library in terms of wrapping the Win32 API. Microsoft has the Micro Foundation class library for C++ that is a much thinner wrapper and is not fully visual RAD model. And WinForms, which is RAD but maps indirectly only a subset of the WinAPI as part of the .NET approach. VCL has also a very deep and smooth COM integration. It's the best integration out there with COM. And now, and that's what I'm going to underline most, is that the fact that the VCL has first-class support for WinRT API. You can mix and match WinAPI code and WinRT code within a single application. So you don't need to create a new application and rewrite it for that support. Now, if you start using WinRT as your underlying API, even in part, your application will require Windows 8 or Windows 10 and will not be run and execute all of the features on Windows 7. So let's go back and provide an overview of where we are in terms of VCL support and Delphi support for Windows 10, and then spend the last part of the webinar focusing on Centennial and new features that are coming along. So what's available in the VCL specifically for Windows 10? First is styling. Styling allows you to take an existing VCL application that uses the traditional look and feel and move it over to using nicer, modern, Windows 10 specific look and feel with a fairly limited effort. It won't be zero beside the very simple short demos, but it's a very limited effort compared to rewriting with a new set of controls the entire UI of your application. Also, and that's what I'm going to show next, is the ability to leverage new VCL components that specifically match the look and feel and the behavior or new WinRT Windows 10 controls. Now, they don't hook to the WinRT Windows 10 controls. They are completely rebuilt using the VCL, which means these controls will work on Windows 10, but also when the application runs on Windows 7, because there is no dependency on the WinRT API. There is only a behavior that resembles the WinRT UI controls. And finally, we do have real WinRT support and specific components for it, although, as mentioned, this will require Windows 10 as in the underlying operating system for your application. So first is about VCL styles. There's a lot that has been said about VCL styles. There are lots of demos that we ship and provide, but I think it's worth, if you are not familiar with them, to spend just 2 minutes in a very short demo that will create a very simple application and style it. So here I have RunStudio 10.1 Berlin. I'm going to create a new VCL Forms application. I'm going to rapidly drop a few components in it, a checkbox, a button, an edit. We can also drop in a panel, and that's it. So we have our great, nice application. We can run it, and it looks like a good old Windows application. Now what I'm going to do is to go to the project options, select the appearance section, and decide that I want to enable styles, and specifically I want to enable some of the new Windows 10 styles. So for this one I'm going to pick the Windows 10 blue style, and as an example that's the default, and I'm going to select it and just run the application again, and now we have a styled application that has clearly a different look and feel and behavior compared to the compared to the application with no styling. Again, there is much more to styling than this trivial demo. A lot of controls. You can see the DB grid here are fully styled, and there is certainly some work you'll have to do to clean up your code for it, but it's significantly less expensive and difficult than a complete rewrite with a new set of UI controls. Now the other area is we introduced new specific controls for Windows 10. They're called WinX because of that. So one of them is an animated activity indicator. That's a much better replacement with the modern style than an hourglass. Another is our relative panel. This has more behavior than an actual look and feel. In this panel, you can position components that are relative to another component. So in that case, you can have a button that has another control on top of it and an edit on the side, and you can change the relative position, move the original component, and everything will get smoothly resized. The point here is that with the bigger variety of real screen estate that customers have, this provides more flexibility in terms of positioning your controls on a form. We do have a specific search box that has standard behavior and lookalike, and we have a split view, which is a fairly nice control with the ability to have a side menu or the split view itself, which can have different types of runtime behavior, dynamic, animated, show up and hiding, can come on top of the existing control or move the existing control on the side, and has a fairly large number of customization. And that's what I'm going to demonstrate shortly next. Here is the split view demo that we ship with the product. As you can see, the control is on this side, and it hosts menu items of different categories. There's only one category with 3 items that are listed here. And it has a number of different behaviors that can be modified by using the other controls in this panel. So it's actually much better to demonstrate it by running it. And as you can see, the buttons have a click effect. You can have an overlay status. So this control will just overlay the window rather than show up on the side. You can go for a compact mode. So it collapses to icons without the titles, and it expands to full titles. And then you can have different placements, different animations, animation delays, and several other options. These applications also demonstrate dynamically loading styles within a single application. So for example, this is now using a fully Windows Dark style. And this is the basic Windows 10 style with no extra coloring, or the good old traditional Windows look and feel. After the split view, we have the toggle switch, which is a checkbox with a completely different UI, but the checkbox behavior, and it can be on and off, and is again styled and flexible in terms of UI behavior. So these are the controls that are available that again are completely built in VCL, so you can use them also in your Windows 7 application, and at the same time you can fully use the Windows 10 styling if you want on an older version of the operating system. The styling is not tied physically or in terms of APIs to a specific version. Next area I want to focus on is Windows Runtime. So what is the Windows Runtime beside being the foundation of the new API, the new world of Windows from Windows 8 onwards? It's technically an object-oriented API with asynchronous operations, so you can really block any API call for more than 50 milliseconds. It's technically based on a physical layout in terms of virtual method tables that matches the COM layout. However, it does not use the same type system or type libraries of COM, and it does not use the same object construction and lifetime mechanism of COM. It has its own object construction and lifetime approach. WinRT is not .NET. WinRT is not managed code. Microsoft started years ago indicating that eventually .NET would become the core foundation of Windows, but what's happening in practice is that now we have a new foundation of Windows that is native. It's C++, natively compiled code, is not managed, is not .NET. So when you are calling WinRT from .NET, you have to go through a native invocation layer. When you are calling .NET from RUT Studio, either Delphi or C++, you're just doing a local direct native API call with no overhead of any sort. RUT Studio provides interfaces for the Windows runtime using interfaces because, again, there's the same underlying foundation. So what you can find in the product is a lot of units, they're called WinAPI something, that map and surface all of the WinRT APIs. There is a new Windows string type that used for string processing because as COM and C++ don't have a native string type, each of them defines its own physical string type. And this one is different from COM. So ultimately, once you have this APIs declaration that we ship with the product, you really don't need a lot of code to interface with WinRT. Basically, you need a way to create an object of the proper class, and that's done by providing a string description of the class to the system, and the system will instantiate the right object for you, and then you just call the APIs for that object returned by class factory. So this is the list of the interfaces. There are some that we are already interfacing with higher level components. There are some that don't make terrible sense. There are some UI elements that won't easily mix and match with the VCL, but there is a lot that you can leverage in your own code. Interfaces are used to reference to make the WinRT calls, as I mentioned. they do use the same automatic reference counting. We use this helper class I already mentioned, and there you can use this dot factory element of the type to access a constructor. And what I'm going to show you while going through a demo of one of the 3 components that we ship that are mapped on WinRT, and the 3 components are shared contracts, notifications, and Bluetooth. So I'm going to show you an example using notifications, but within that example, rather than staying on the surface, we're going to delve into exactly the low-level codes that are done, and with the goal of not fully understanding, but at least having a glance of what does it mean to call WinRT APIs. So this is a project that uses the notification center component that wraps the notification API on WinRT. Although notice that this same component wraps similar iOS and Android APIs on different platforms. So it's not a WinRT specific component, it's just a component that you can use across different platforms. If I run the application, which is not really my main goal, but just to get a feeling of what happens, if I press the show button, a notification will happen, and if I interact with it, the application receives that information. Or I can avoid clicking on it, and it will show up in my notification list here. Now, my point is really not much to look into the behavior of the application, but look into the internals. Again, we have a notification, it goes create notification, it sets some parameters, and then calls this present notification. Now, the best way to go through it is to try to run through the code, debug through it, and see how this ends up calling WinRT APIs. So let me press the show button again, and if we trace into this call, first it does a create notification that is an operation, a generic operation that creates a notification object. So this is a fairly high level operation. The object has different settings, and then we go to present notification, is where we will end up kicking in on the specific platform support. So this do present notification is actually platform features. It checks if the feature is supported and is available, and if so, it will jump into the platform specific code. And in fact, now we are into the T-Notification Center WinRT implementation. And what it does a few steps, but now it uses the actual WinRT object. This T-Toast notification has a factory that you can use to create toast notification, which is the internal name that Microsoft uses. And it passes some parameter, a template for the parameter. So what's exactly this T-Toast notification? So if we go for the definition of this API, we can find it here. This T-Toast notification is a class that uses a template for referring and implementing an interface. The interface is called iToast notification, and this is the WinRT interface. It's actually fairly simple. It has a create toast notification. So if we go back to debugging, now when we go through the steps of create toast notification, we have the template construction first, and then we are going to create the object through the factory, providing the class name of the actual object as a parameter. This interface has the create toast notification feature, and as you can see, it is decorated with a class name attribute. And if we look at the class name attribute, this is the name of the internal class that's used in the class factory to physically create the proper WinRT objects. So WinRT objects are not stored in the registry like COM, or don't use other mechanisms, but what you do is you provide a specific string to the system to ask for an object to be created for you. If we go back to our code, factory returns the interface to the object, and then you can use the interface to the object to do follow-up operations, like here add activated, add dismissed, add failed. These are the delegates or the event handlers for a notification. And finally, we can use the notifier to call the show method and show the actual notification to the user. Now, for the last part of this talk, I want to focus on the Windows Desktop Bridge, or Project Centennial. Now, what is this bridge? This bridge is a technology provided by Microsoft to package a WinRT, a Windows application, a Win32, Win64 Windows application, like those you will generally create with RTStudio, into what is called a Universal Windows Platform app. Technically is an APPX file with specific features. Installation of APPX files is provided in the anniversary update, so it will not work on plain vanilla Windows 10. It requires anniversary update to be installed on the end user machine. So once you have created an APPX, you can follow the APPX installation model in anniversary update. The other feature that is clearly the most important one is the ability to publish those apps in the Windows Store, something that's not open today, but it seems to be coming fairly shortly. What is physically an APPX? Is technically a single zip file with the entire distribution. So it will have your executable, additional DLLs, configuration files, and it will expand in a subfolder of the operating system, and the application will have the permission to write only to that subfolder by default, and it will, if it touches the registry, it will use a virtual access to the registry that's specific to the application. The idea behind the APPX installation is very similar to what happens on mobile platforms, where you install a single file, it creates its own substructure, but then uninstallation means removing everything, the file, the application is generated, all of the settings and the configurations at once, leaving the system much cleaner. So this model offers safety net in terms of file system and registry virtualization, but you can technically run native apps that can call any Windows API by themselves and access to the entire set of features of the operating system. The only limitation is that these applications cannot be elevated, and you can use them in device drivers, which is reasonable. So what is changing here is, one, the ability to package the Win32 apps, and that can be done in two different ways. I'm going to focus only on one. The other is the ability to distribute those apps to anniversary update users and to the same user through the Windows Store. So how do you build an APPX today? There are two approaches. One is using an installer. For now, what you need to do is create a plain installation of Windows, install your application with your custom installer, and then the system will be able to do a diff of the image before and after the installation and create and capture the list of the files. Even if they are installed on Windows System 32 or any other location, they'll be virtualized within the APPX package. Some of the most popular installers are being empowered with, of course, technical support from Microsoft to be able to generate the APPX directly. So rather than having to go through this process of installing and doing a compare with an image, the installers will be able to create an APPX file. There is another option though, which is manually building an APPX. This is not recommended if your application installs hundreds of thousands of files, and it has a lot of dependencies on system libraries and other similar features. Because, for example, if you depend on .NET, you're going to ship bits and pieces of that platform into your application. But for a RunStudio application, that's what is generally called an Xcopy app. It's an executable with a few ancillary files, possibly runtime packages or something, database drivers, and a few more things. It might be fairly simple to manually build an APPX. Now, this is not our goal. Our goal is to be able to support from within the RunStudio IDE the deployment and the generation of an APPX file, like we support iOS and Android and Mac OS application packaging for store. But for now, what we'll have to do is to follow these steps and create the application. So the first step is using this Make AppX tool that's part of the Windows 10 Anniversary Edition SDK. And what you need to provide to it is a text file that has the list of the files you want to package. And so let's actually look at an actual demo and how we can run these steps. So here I have a fairly simple application built with Delphi. It doesn't really matter what the application does. It's just a simple app, native, binary, built for Win64, I think in this case. And here is my map file, which is the list of all of the files that we need to deploy along with the application. There are two different images, different form factors, 44 by 44 and 150 by 150 pixels, PNG files that are required. There is a manifest file. The manifest file is where you have all of the description of your application, you have user information, and a lot of other metadata. So the map file determines the content of the APPX. The APPX manifest determines the metadata of the APPX. And here you can see a few things, like there is a publisher, there is an architecture, again in this case 64-bit. There is a display name, there is the logo, and there are other graphical elements and description and more. It has run full trust. This is required for applications that call Win32 APIs, and again, something that is going to be enabled for store apps going forward, but was not enabled in the past. So now that I have these files, there's not much I can do here in the IDE. What I need to do is to open a command line and execute a few steps here. The first command I need to execute is make appx, and that's the location on my system, and I need to do the pack operation and provide the map file and provide the name of the output that I want to build. Let's create a new one so it's different than the one I already had. It's being packaged, and now we have our full package. The next step is signing the package. For signing the package, I need to call sign tool, and again provide the name of the application. It's now 2, and go for it. Now at this point, I've created an APPX file. This APPX file is not a running application. Again, it's just a container of a bunch of files, including my app. So if you execute it, what you're doing is not running the application, but actually installing the application. It has a specific restriction, runs in full trust mode. I'm going to install it, And I can install it because my ID is registered, and also because I've configured my operating system to allow side loading of applications that don't come from the store and have a weak signature, because that's what I've used as a development only signature for this application. Now you can also install the application with its wonderful logo and get it started from the start button in Windows. What is interesting is to look at the installation folder and the structure of that application. If you go under program files, you can find Windows Apps folder that has restricted access. I've enabled myself full permissions, and within it you can find the structure of the application once it's expanded into the system. So the metadata, signature, the logos, and the executable that I originally started this with, number of files and other information. This is where they are located. Notice how this uses a strong application ID and the version as part of the folder name, so you can install multiple versions of the same application side by side into the system. Again, this is a manual set of steps to build an app. We plan very shortly to release an update to RStudio, providing full ability to create the APPX directly within the IDE. One question that's worth asking is, Microsoft started these bridges because they saw very limited adoption of the WinRT model in Windows 8, and now that is changing that much on Windows 10 timeframe. So the point was to help customers move their existing applications to the new versions of Windows in a fully empowering the new capabilities. Again, applications can call WinRT APIs alongside the traditional API and be distributed through the store. Now, what I'm not 100% convinced is that Microsoft on one side is acknowledging there is a lot of code out there, and migration to WinRT basically means a full rewrite, which developers generally don't plan doing, even more for a business type of app. But on the other hand, Microsoft's recommendation is to start using the Centennial bridge, but then create an application structure with a WinRT side and a Win32 side, and slowly migrate all features to WinRT, and finally dump the Win32 application. Now, I'm not personally convinced this makes a lot of sense, because this bridge is really meant to help you move your application to the new world and leverage at the same time all the new features, all the new technologies, so you don't really need to do a full rewrite of your application. The other advantage is that if you're staying on the Win32 side, those applications will also technically still running on Windows 7. But time will tell if the Microsoft push will get developers to convert all of their application natively and completely to the WinRT world. Windows Store distribution is a game changer. I think it's going to be for most of you. And also because alongside with the Windows Store distribution, the public store distribution, the APPX model allows for enterprise level distribution with a sort of enterprise store you can load applications onto and control the internal usage of those applications for the individual users within the enterprise. The limitation, of course, for the Windows Store is that requires Windows 10 anniversary. However, I think most Windows 10 users will move to that level relatively soon. It is still not available to the public as of today, but the error message you are getting, I am getting today, is not that this package is illegal like it was before, but only that my developer account hasn't got the right permissions. But this kind of indicates that the support is coming. A few applications have started shipping. A few Win32 applications have started shipping on the Windows Store over the last week, 10 days. So there is a lot of movement in this area, and I recommend you to start looking into it and be ready as soon as Microsoft enables the store. So what's coming? As I was mentioning, IDE-based Windows Store deployment is a feature that we are planning for update 2 of Berlin. So if you are already on Berlin, just wait for it to show up. If you're not, you can consider moving to Berlin right away to be able to leverage this coming feature. The other capability that we're going to add is one additional WinRT lookalike control. It's a calendar control. That's 2 of the views. There is also a year view, a decade view, sorry, with the different years. These are 2 of the views that are available. It's animated, fully interactive, and extremely nice implementation of the WinRT calendar control with a really distinct UI compared to the old Windows calendars. There are other plans around VCL improvements unrelated strictly to Centennial or Windows 10 anniversary update, like improvements in designers and VCL quality for the update 2, and then of course for following releases of the product. So in summary, VCL is the best Windows client library, and Microsoft is making Win32 development first class again after suggesting to go in different directions. The Centennial support is expected to open up Windows Store deployment, which is a game changer for the Windows platform, and the company is fully committed to keep Delphi focused on the evolving Windows 10 platform, which are all good reasons, along with the current active discounts, to buy Delphi or RadStudio Berlin 10.1 by the end of the month, and taking advantage of the 10% discount and the free bonus pack on professional, the free mobile add-on pack for professional, and the bonus pack with Konopka control, radiant shapes, and my handbook updated for Berlin. So with that, let's open it for questions. Thanks.
Looks like there are already quite a few questions in here.
Yeah, there are a few, and a few I answered during the time. There is a set of questions that we can address collectively, which is around compatibility between different applications and be able to use WinRT code within applications that ship for Windows 7. Now, at runtime, you cannot use WinRT code in applications that ship and run on Windows 7. I personally haven't tried, but WinRT is mapped with dynamic binding, so I'm not expecting that an application containing those bits will not run on Windows 7. Just as you execute the specific WinRT code, that's subject to likely an exception, but you can test if you're running on which Windows version you're running onto, and of course it's not 7, the numbers are completely messed up, but I think they are 6.1 and 6.2 or whatever. I lost track of the numbers. And so it should be possible to have a single executable that adapts to the platform. All of the newer Windows APIs that we call are called with dynamic links, with the late binding of DLLs, and that allows you to have not having to do like low library, get proc address, and all of the low-level stuff, but just make directly a call to the DLL. If it's not there, you get an external exception. But if you wrap your call to if version of Windows is the good one, it should be relatively safe. And again, all of the controls, all of the VCL controls, existing and future, are built in a way that they will perfectly work on Windows, even on older version of Windows. But we are not supporting anything before 7 at this point. While, yeah, when you're hooking into WinRT, you need, and of course for Centennial, even more, you don't even just need Windows 10, you need Windows 10 anniversary update, so the latest, just released a month ago version of the operating system.
Now, I guess with the advantage of Microsoft having this, it's all Windows 10 going on now, is that we can be pretty confident that the users will be on the latest version going forward, do you think? Or are people upgrading pretty well on Windows 10?
I haven't tracked the numbers. I've seen, I don't think we can take for granted that everyone will update. Right now, at least for the machines that I have, the update was not automatic. I had to like go and download the thing to push the update. Also on enterprise editions, there's not even an update application, but you have basically to throw in your ISO and do like a reinstall of the operating system, of the new operating system on top of itself. Not that we need excuses for asking for our excessive reinstall for update 1, but someone was mentioning in my blog, oh, when you update Windows, you don't have to do a reinstall. No, I just had to put the ISO, I mean, into the system to move it to anniversary edition. So that's a full, and it left over the entire copy of the old operating system on my hard drive, using 20 gigs of space. So it's anyway. So I'm not expecting everyone will immediately move to up to anniversary edition. Also, there's been some political complaints because Microsoft seems to track to get a little more information about your PC on anniversary, and also they disabled the option to not to have automatic updates. I mean, it's still available through the group policies, but some customers got annoyed by the fact that now updates are automatic and they just install and reboot your PC when they want, unless you really mess at the low level. So I know that some people are complaining, but I guess that's going to be a minority, and most people will keep current with Windows 10.
Yeah, I noticed that about the automatic updates. I went to, just installed a new virtual machine. I went to tweak that, and I was like, wait a second. There's no option to tweak this. It's just like, hey, we're going to install updates and reboot for you. And I'm like,
Yeah. After 2 nights, I left like everything open, RStudio projects, other stuff open. I got back in the morning and like it was like a new login screen. I disabled it, and it is possible, although it takes some effort. But yeah, again, that's going to be the exception. And honestly, I mean, Win32 application delivered through the store are starting to appear. I know there is Evernote. I know there are a few others delivered over the last week or 10 days. That's for most customers would be a good enough reason to actually go to anniversary edition. The fact that you have almost a guarantee that all of these applications are not going to pollute your version of Windows and mess up with the registry, but you can uninstall them with one click and everything will get cleaned up at the operating system level, not just at the uninstaller level. And that, I guess, will be a big bonus for moving over to anniversary edition.
Yeah. So there's a few questions here around being able to tell if you're on a WinRT capable computer and what happens if you run WinRT code that's not on a WinRT capable system. How does that, color directives, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of checking, you need to check the version of the operating system. I don't think there is another way. There are specific libraries, but that's a little more tricky to check. So WinRT is available on Windows 8. However, the APIs are not compatible. For example, the notification code, it was Microsoft telling, well, the notification code was broken, so we create a new API that's not backward compatible, so sorry. So I really recommend, testing for Windows 10. If you are on Windows 10, you can take for granted that WinRT works. If you are on an older version, you can consider not risking making WinRT calls.
Now, with this APPX packaging and such, is it possible to have your Delphi or C++ Builder application as the target of other applications through the sharing center? I know right now we can target other applications, but can we become the target as well?
That's my understanding, but I'm guilty of not trying it out directly in person. There are features in the WinRT runtime, and one of them is being the target of sharing, the other, or contracts as they call them, or the other is push notifications, which is an interesting thing to do on the desktop. These features require a strong app ID, but a strong app ID is exactly what you receive when you are using the bridge. So my understanding is that those features become available within an APPX, not with the application executed standalone, but with the application as an APPX. However, this is one of the things that you should really try before to be sure, because a million things can go wrong. So I don't have the certainty. And Microsoft is touting as a way to implement that model, to create this small WinRT app that sits within the APPX, but it's a separate executable, and then they use like a socket connection to integrate with. I don't think it's a great model, honestly, but so the possibility of having the single executable that does everything would be way better.
Yeah. Now, we're talking about having the ability to do this from within the IDE itself, right? And when is that going to happen?
That's planned for Update 2, and no, not going to tell when Update 2 will be available. However, if you go to the roadmap we published on community.embarcadero.com in August, you can clearly see that there is a full time frame for Update 2. So it's not far, but it will still take a little time. Yeah, the plan is to integrate the deployment in a very similar way that of what we do for the other three platforms, I mean iOS, Android, and Mac. So basically having the option to create a list of files in your deployment window and then click your deploy button and end up generating the APPX file. Again, exactly as you generate an APK or an IPA file for IPA file for iOS and the other platforms. So the process will be very similar, the UI will be very similar, and it should make it easier to do those steps. And also we'll try to make it easier to create the temporary certificate, again something the IDE does for you for Android. And in terms of cost, I don't think you need, I think you can go along with the certificate that you get from your Windows Store account. Although I haven't tried, I've just used a temporary developer certificate for my experiments. But the store account should give you a certificate, and the store account costs some 20 euros or something similar, and it's a lifetime account, not a yearly account. So more or less like Google, not like Apple.
Yep. I was going to say I think it was like $25 US when I did it, but it was a long time ago because you don't have to redo it every year.
yeah. It's always there, and but yeah, at most you might have to spend the extra money for a public certificate. Those could be a little expensive, but it's honestly something you should generally use also for distribution of a standard Win32 executable these days for security reasons.
So speaking of standard Win32 executables, is it possible to have the same source code for a traditional VCL or FireMonkey application and also a WinRT UWP application? Does that require compiler switches, or what would be the difference between the two if you wanted to have one that supported like legacy Windows and also through UWP?
So if you want to create a Windows, a new WP application that is based on the bridge, nothing, you can be the same exact project, or you might want to have two separate projects, one without the WinRT code for Windows 7 and one with the WinRT code. But basically, You just build your application regularly with the existing compilers, and you package it into a universal Windows platform application. Now, we don't provide the ability to create a WinRT exclusive application that only uses the WinRT APIs. That's fairly tricky to do, and we currently don't see an added value in natively supported that model. I mean, it's tricky to do it. That will imply not using VCL. VCL is not portable to WinRT, and FireMonkey would be also very tricky to port to a pure WinRT solution.
So does the bridge give your app standard Windows 10 gestures, for example, swiping down from the top of the screen to exit the app, or do I still have to add this functionality manually into the application?
That's a good question. I don't think this is automatic, because after all, the application behavior and the way the application interacts with the Windows API is the good old Win32 API that's available. So I'm not expecting that this becomes an automatic feature. All the APPX packaging does is lets you run this untrusted application as a trusted app. I know it's a bit odd, on the ground that the file system and the registry are protected, but in terms of Windows API behavior, physical interaction with the entire operating system, it's a good old Win32, Win64 application that you're building, and it behaves exactly the same. What you are not allowed to do is elevation, so become run as admin. That's not technically possible for reasonably good for good reasons. And the other thing, if you need to touch on like drivers, low-level features, those are also out of reach.
Okay. So that swipe down from the top it's an app feature, not an OS feature. So it would be something you have to add.
That's my understanding. So I'm not expecting that to become available out of the box.
Are you planning to share the source code from the demo you offered?
Well, not really. The source code it's a demo that's been floating around. I think I might have the demo on one of my collection of REST clients. It's just 3 lines XML code that reads from Delphi feeds and parses the RSS feed. But it's a demo that's probably floating around, and I haven't touched the code in any way to turn it into an APPX. That's the important thing. So I didn't have to touch anything in the code. All I had to do was take the executable and do that further steps of packaging, providing the files, providing the manifest, and so on.
Is there going to be functionality added to the IDE to support code signing of binaries?
That's one of the things. Yeah, we plan supporting the code signing and the APPX packaging steps from the IDE. So all you need to do is to take your APPX and upload it to the Microsoft Store. I tried it 30 minutes ago while the recording was playing, just to make sure. It's still not enabled, but I think it's not going to take more than 1 or 2 weeks for them to open up the store. Again, some applications are already there.
What about business-to-business app distribution? Is that going to be available through the App Store, or do you know how that's going to work for the Windows App Store?
No, I don't have all of the details. So there is mechanism that Microsoft has in place for enterprise customers that is like an internal enterprise store model. This is another virtualization technology that Microsoft has around, and basically what happens is that they took that technology and moved it as part of the Centennial bridge. That's not the full story, but partially how that started. But I don't remember the name of that specific technology. But it allows distributing the same APPX files throughout a company. Of course, when the clients are on Windows 10 Anniversary Edition, and that is more than for tracking licensing or anything. Is really meant to be an internal enterprise software distribution mechanism, which from I mean, listening to some of the Microsoft sessions on this topic seems to be a fairly big business. But of course, for public distribution and consumers distribution, yeah, the public store becomes critical, and the way you can get paid is, well, you can say that the application is free, and at that point you don't get paid, you get just get the distribution, or you can sell the application, and I'm not sure if Microsoft is going to take 30%. I think it's 25% compared to the Apple 30%, but something in that range. So you'll be able to, if you have a successful app, to just sit there, count the money, and not having to bother about distribution, installation, delivery, selling, setting up a credit card. I mean, anything. It's just part of the store experience, exactly like it happens on the mobile platforms today.
Now, is the Microsoft Store more like Apple, where they screen to get approved or possibly get rejected?
They say they screen applications, and for mostly for security reasons, for content, with some ratings and so on. Given the past history of Microsoft, I mean, Windows 8 Store was really a collection of total rubbish and pirates and illegal stuff. So they claim to do a great job comparable to Apple. The reality from the past is slightly different. But again, maybe they now they've learned the lesson, and they will ramp up the quality level. It was really a quality level that wasn't there. Yeah, I don't know the percentage. I think I remember 25%, but it's, if you go to on Microsoft developer sites, that should be an information that's available there.
Okay. Now, there's a question here about calling .NET assemblies from Delphi VCL applications, if that's possible.
Possible, yes. I'm not sure exactly about the packaging. My understanding is that if you have a dependency on a non-system library, so like, I don't know, a library that's part of .NET, but it's not part of the current version of .NET that ships with Delphi, with Windows 10, then you have to add those libraries into the distribution, which gets things a little crazy. But I'm not specific. I know that's true for, in general, for like add-on DLLs, even additional system DLLs. I mean, you're never going. I mean, you can even in your APPX, you can even have C/Windows System 32 and have files there. But of course, that's fake. It's not the real. It's just a placeholder, a local placeholder that is added logically to Windows System 32. So anything that's not in the operating system, you have to install in the APPX. Now, and in that case, I'd recommend like using an installation program, because it will get tricky to determine which files are needed. Now, if you're just going with the standard stock .NET that comes with Windows 10, it might be smoother, but that's something I haven't looked into. I know that .NET in itself is supported as part of the bridge, of the desktop bridge, so they might have thought out a good solution there.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that the desktop bridge supports .NET applications as well as native Windows API applications. Really, it seems like with this new bridge, at least in my opinion, it seems like as a Delphi or C++ Builder developer, we're like in the best possible position, because we can we've got this productive system for building native applications, getting them done quickly, and being able to take full advantage of the UWP platform and be in the Windows Store and everything like that. So we got the best performance, we're not virtualized, high productivity, and full access to the platform.
Yeah, that's exactly my take. Microsoft is touting that as, oh, Visual C++, a great tool to use, but of course that's also true for Delphi or C++ Builder, exactly in the same way. So this puts, I mean, certainly puts native Windows apps in the spotlight. somehow. And again, the fact that I mentioned during the session, WinRT is technically a native API. It's very similar to technically a COM API. So that means if you're just passing an integer or passing some data structures, it's done directly, natively, with no marshalling and no operation. If you're calling from .NET, you go through a marshalling layer. Probably not a big performance blocker, but still, it's a layer that has to be invoked to reach exactly as when you're doing pinvoke to a Win32 API from .NET. So native to native is actually quite smooth and should be working very fast.
Now the app, you said you're trying to submit one to the App Store. Does it have the full code signing certificate? Have you signed it with the full certificate?
No, I haven't done that.
Maybe is that why it's not being accepted? Maybe.
No. The reason it's accepted, I showed the error message. It says because your developer account, because there is an option you have to specify in the manifest, which is run full trust mode, meaning you can call the Windows API in practical terms. And until 2-3 weeks ago, when you were trying to submit an application like this to the store, it will tell you, oh, full trust mode is not supported for store apps, period. Now the error message is, oh, your developer account is not allowed to have full trust application, which means, and that's something I heard from Microsoft, they have enabled a few high-profile Windows developers, companies, again, Evernote, Adobe, and a few other large companies for now, but they are going to open up to everyone soon. So at that point, yeah, the issue might become that the code signing is not correct, or they might want to debate the fact that this application is totally useless. But that's another side of the vetting.
Yeah, that they talked about that it was rolling out, so that makes sense.
Yeah, they mentioned. I mean, they did a big press release like a week ago, and again, a few applications have started to appear. But my expectation is within a few weeks at most, it will be available for any developer account. And of course, I was hoping to have that ready by this webinar, but too bad that's not the case.
So if someone wants to develop new production, you kind of touched on this already. If someone wants to develop a big new ERP application, for example, would you recommend VCL or FireMonkey, and why?
That's not an easy question. I'd say this might depend on the type of UI that you're expected to build and the type of UI controls that you want to use. Like if you want to leverage one of the existing extremely powerful VCL grids from third-party vendors, VCL might be an advantage. However, even if there are nice grids coming out for FireMonkey, which are growing and getting better day after day, but they don't right now. Honestly, they don't parallel the breadth of and the quality of some of the VCL apps. Now the big question is asking not strictly on the technology but on the scope. Okay, this is a big ERP for Windows, but are there features, capabilities that might also be make sense on mobile or Mac or other platforms? You might have a section of the ERP that is, I don't know, for entering orders by a reseller, an agent, and those would be great mobile. So if even portions of the app could be moved to a mobile platform, then of course FireMonkey becomes a much nicer proposition. But if you are an experienced VCL developer, building the VCL app will be faster today for you. I mean, there is also a learning curve in FireMonkey that is not. It's not trivial. It takes some time to understand and get used to the platform. So again, hard to tell without knowing the specific experience or scenario. But the VCL is not going away. It's going to remain a big option. FireMonkey has much nicer graphic capabilities, and certainly the cross-platform appeal. If those two are totally useless in the scenario, then VCL might be a perfectly good thing.
Yeah, it's never a straightforward answer. Something like that. It always depends on your scope, your intentions, and such. So, okay, well, I think we're through the questions here. Someone's in the background answering them as well, it looks like, so we've gotten a lot of them typed out as well, so be sure to save that out for the Q&A log. Thank you so much, Marco, for this great webinar and for all the work you do on bringing Delphi forward and making it work with all the latest Windows features. That's always something fantastic to see, that it's keeping up with what's going on in the world, which now with 4 platforms, that's a lot to keep up with and a lot to support, but it's great to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm not sure if we can brag that we are going to have the best support for Centennial Bridge for any IDE, but that's likely. So we'll see. And when our feature is embedded, if Microsoft would have that available, but I think we're likely going to be first.
Yeah. Well, if nothing else, the combination of things we offer is going to be amazing. So fantastic. All right, well, thank you, Marco, and thank you, everybody else, for joining us, and we will look forward to seeing everyone else online again later. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.